Simo, pronouns of he, him in Canada, wants to ask us something about morality. So welcome, Simo. How are you?
Oh, Canadians.
Yeah, hi.
Shannon from Canada. She's allowed to say that.
Yeah, so I literally have probably like 2 minutes max. I gotta get back to work. But by the way, I was sent here by a friend of mine from Facebook.
Okay.
So my question.
Well, if you only got 2 minutes, just get to it.
Yeah, exactly. So my question is, how can you say subjectively that, for example, rape is wrong, past, present, and future? That's pretty much my question.
I don't know if I heard the question.
How can you say that subjectively that rape is wrong, past, present, and future? So for
Subjectively, easily.
For me, it's really simple. I define my understanding of morality is rooted in the well-being of thinking creatures, and that sets it up so that you can assess whether or not an action is in the best interest of a creature or against it. And so that's how all of the assessments are made. And so all I have to do is look at rape, which violates a person's bodily autonomy, their right to govern themselves, all of these things that are foundational to the well-being of individuals, and puts that directly in conflict. And so as long as that's the case, then I can, even though it's a subjective opinion that we should care about the well-being of people, if you don't care about the well-being of people, I guess we can have a discussion about why you don't. But as long as you do, then you can make an objective assessment and say, hey, something like rape violates those principles about our well-being.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think that I'm also fully sick of the utilization of objective and subjective in order to couch it as though saying it's I'm better because I can objectively say, based on, the divine mandate, I guess, which you can't even really if you're a Christian, but whatever. But I can objectively say by divine mandate, rape is wrong, where you're just saying rape is wrong because you can provide a bunch of justifiable reasons. Like, why is it that one is demonstrably better than the other? If our ultimate goal is to motivate people towards behaving in an appropriate way towards other people, it seems to me that would be better to provide justifications for that.
Boy, I was about
to say that there's some sort of like divine mandate that dictates that you should do that, otherwise you're individually punished. I don't know.
I was about to vehemently disagree with you, and then you flipped what you were saying a little bit, because when you said, why is it that one of them's better than the other? I'm like, well, because one of them's actually a foundational system based on evidence and principle, and the other one is divine command theory, which is
I got there. It's gonna give me a minute every once in a while, man. Just
I want, because Simo's short on time, I want to get back to Simo and find out whether that was helpful or if he has other questions.
Yeah, so basically, subjectively, like, you cannot really guarantee in the future, I don't know, like 500 years away from today, like, you cannot really guarantee that it's going to be subjectively wrong, basically. For example, because
so hang on. I can't guarantee anything 500 years from now, and neither can a theist. A theist, they don't have any way to prove that their opinion about morality is in fact being governed and guarded by a divine creator, because we don't know what any God thinks about morality. All I know is what people think God thinks about morality. So 500 years from now, a theist has no theist. There is no problem with secular morality that is in any way solved by appealing to a God, unless that God is real and demonstrates its existence. And even then, a God doesn't necessarily care about our well-being.
And then the youth of pro dilemma just clicks into also. So.
Yeah. I didn't really mention anything about God or theism or anything. I'm just like asking you personally, like generally asking you, like subjectively, basically, you cannot really say.
Simo, I answered it robustly, which is there is no problem with this that you can solve. How can you possibly have an implied objection to what's going to my moral view, not being able to guarantee what's moral in 500 years if you don't have a better solution? How do you solve that?
Well, exactly. For example, incest 50 years ago was wrong, right? Like, but today incest is fine. I mean,
Simo, did you just say, Simo, stop.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about with incest, but what I asked you was, what solution do you have to this supposed problem of how do you guarantee that rape is wrong in 500 years?
Well, I mean, from a theist perspective, like theists will say, well, if like the objective truth comes from God, then God says like rape is wrong, then
where?
So no.
Where even?
Simo, this is what I'm saying.
No,
You haven't. No. Shut up and listen. You haven't solved the problem. You've just told me that theists don't believe there is a problem. And I don't give a shit what they believe. I give a shit what they can prove. And just because you can't even guarantee in 500 years now, theists will still feel the same way, because when you look at the religions that exist right now, they have changed in the last 500 years and the last 1,000 years and things like that. So you can't even guarantee that. And the reason is because we don't know anything about a God or what a God wants. We only know what people think about what a God wants.
Right. And these seems to be arguments about, one sec, Simo, sorry, I want to contribute one more thing before you talk, I apologize. But these seems to be arguments about potential consequence as well. So like a lot of when I hear people talking about objective morality, a lot of what I hear is, if there's no consequence for the individual, like if they could get away with it, then it's unfair. Or that maybe words won't mean what they mean anymore in the future. So therefore they don't mean anything now. And both of those are kind of nonsense to me, because you don't know the mind of God. So how do you know that God's not going to change his mind at some point in time? Maybe tomorrow God says, you know what? Rape's fine.
Yeah. What if there is a God and that God doesn't care about morality?
Right, exactly. So if God wakes up tomorrow and says, you know what? Rape's actually fine, then that is objectively moral at that point. That is objectively moral. But you would disagree with that. You would say, no, it's not. And then you would provide reasons and you would demonstrate why, and you would appeal to the definition of morality, and which is exactly what we're doing. We're doing the same thing. We're
just skipping the step of pointing to a make-believe friend that we can't prove.
Right. We're saying we're grounding it in reasons that we can provide based on us adhering to the definition of this word. And you're saying, yeah, well, the definition of the word doesn't matter because God said. And I think that we're doing better for that very reason.
And now we'll give you the last word, because I know you got to go.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know why we're talking about God. I just wanted to see the atheist perspective about this question specifically. I'm not trying to say like, well, since you're saying it's going to be okay in I don't know, maybe even 2 years or 3 years down from here.
If you take God out of the equation, okay, so you're taking God out of the equation. Sorry, I am going to interrupt. I'm sorry. But you're saying we're not even talking about God. We're taking God out of the equation, right? We're taking God out of the equation. Exactly. Then we just agree. Then we just agree. Then we just need to provide reasons. Yeah. Then we just need to agree on the definition and provide reasons. So it doesn't matter whether you're an atheist or not, because in this world that you're proposing, in this philosophical, hypothetical world that you're utilizing to make this argument, God doesn't exist, right? So if God doesn't exist, then we just agree that we need to find a good way to define it and then figure out how to do it.
But the other thing is that you've set up an absolutely false problem, which is, how do we guarantee that we'll still view morality the same way in 2 years? And the answer is, there's no reason to think that we will, and there's no reason to think that we should. If in fact we are following the evidence towards a better understanding of what is immoral and what is moral, then we will change our mind, just as we have as we get new information and learn new things. You are starting with this notion that morality must be static. And the reality is, we don't have morality. We have some understanding of morality. So I can look back and say that slavery has always been immoral. It's just that people didn't recognize that it was immoral at a given time because their understanding was flawed, and that slavery will continue to be immoral forever unless we get some evidence that shows how and why it would qualify as a moral good. So rather than worrying about how do you guarantee that we'll still think the same way in 2 years, why don't you address the reality, which is we have an understanding of what is moral and immoral, and Shannon and I are basing it on a foundation of well-being and evidence that can be objectively assessed with respect to that well-being. I have not been presented by any theist or non-theist with any problem to that secular moral system that any of them can solve. Gods don't solve it. Appealing to gods don't solve it. When we find a better way to do morality, we change it.
Yeah, but again, like I think I got the answer that I was looking from the atheists. Basically, just because what you're saying, basically, like we're evolving, like even the morality is kind of like evolving and in time, basically. So like even rape at a certain point, it could be, there's this possibility that it could be
no
beneficial for human beings in like
No.
Because if it's back to definitions again,
Yeah,
like if you
no, this is really easy. Our understanding of mathematics is also growing as well. But at no point in their future are we going to find out that 2 + 4 = 97,365. Let's not be absurd. Let's not pretend that just because we don't know absolutely everything about everything, that all of a sudden we're going to find out something that we thought was egregiously, awfully wrong is actually a moral good. I find that so stupid, I'm not even going to continue the call.
He's saying that at some point in time, people got it wrong. And because they got it wrong, that meant that at that point it was right.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. So we're not to suggest that as our morality, as our understanding of what is moral grows and changes, all of a sudden we're going to find out, hey, it's moral to gang rape a bunch of people, then light them on fire and walk away while uttering racial epithets and singing a terrible song. None of that can possibly be, because we work towards a threshold. And when you get to that point of discovery, you find out what was wrong before, but it doesn't move you further away from what is right.
It gets you closer to it.
Yeah. You're not going to go backwards. You are moving away from something. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Anyway.